Okay, welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. Today we're going to learn about hell. Hell. We're going to learn about going to hell. We're going to learn about how to enjoy the journey a little bit more. Who was it? Which diplomat said? I think was it Benjamin Disraeli or Kissinger maybe who said that to be a diplomat is to be able to be skilled enough to tell someone to go to hell and have them look forward to the journey. So. Hell is actually an interesting concept because we Jews don't actually believe in hell. We believe in a modified version of the Christian hell. We believe in something called Gehinnom, which is purgatory, which purgatory means a cleansing, like a purging, a cleansing experience, just like a dry cleaners where you'd go to clean your clothing which are soiled before you go to a wedding. Or the way I like to describe it is more like a therapy session. Therapy could be very painful. It can make you cry. It can make you face difficult emotions and experiences. But it's by unearthing those emotions and experiences that you are actually able to make your way towards healing. And that way, though it hurts, like hell sometimes, you are able to ultimately come to a place of comfort and peace and serenity. So that's my understanding of what hell is. But now, the Gemara, the Talmud we're about to learn, tells us about how we can have a better experience in purgatory. So that sounds like an interesting piece of information. We're going to try to find out today. Now, bear in mind that when somebody passes away, a loved one, you're supposed to say Kaddish for 11 months. Why 11 months? Because a person goes to be judged in purgatory for up to 12 months after they die. By the time the first yahrzeit comes around, they're done. They're done unless they're extraordinarily evil. They don't stay in purgatory for more than 1 year. However, even the people that stay in purgatory for 1 year, they don't really stay more than 11 months. And that's why we say Kaddish for 11 months. If you stay for 12 months, it means you're a really bad guy. And we don't want anyone to say, my dad was a really bad guy, so I'm going to say Kaddish for 12 months. We just keep a standard of 11 months. So it's not to differentiate between different people. But the Kaddish we say is in order to somehow mitigate their pain up in heaven. Now, if you go back to the therapy analogy for a moment, what is the soul doing therapy for up in hell? Before you're able to experience
up in hell,
down in hell. Down in hell. All right, fine, maybe down in hell. Because I look at purgatory as a positive experience, actually. I mean, it's a good thing to go to therapy. Think about that for a second. You're already in hell, and purgatory is going to get you out of there. It's the therapy that's going to get you out of there. It's a narrative therapy, maybe the EMDR, maybe some other form of therapy that when I was in Panama now, I spent time with a rabbi, actually, who specializes in something called emotion code. Emotion code.
Code?
Yeah, emotion code. This is about discovering the trapped emotions. I think I wrote about it in my email this week. The trapped emotions that get stuck inside of us and curb our happiness and prevent us or mitigate our ability to be truly the best versions of ourselves. It's another form of therapy, but if you're able to do emotion code with somebody who knows what he's doing, then you're able to actually come to a place where you can release that emotion. I actually want to bring him to our community for a Shabbaton soon, to spend time with us here, to do emotion code on all of our members.
Is purgatory in prayer a form of therapy?
Yeah. Give me 5 minutes. Love it. Yes, I love how you said that prayer. Yes, that prayer is a form of therapy. Folks, we got to move away from this paradigm of prayer being some sort of a painful reading experience in a foreign tongue. We're going to move away from that idea. This idea that prayer is like, how long could you read ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics? Imagine somebody had to say to you, okay, we're going to sit down every day for an hour and we're going to read hieroglyphics. Man sitting with a bird on his head, man sitting next to bird, man sitting with a spear, man looking at fish. Imagine doing that for an hour every single day. It's like, oh my God, I'm losing my mind, right? But imagine if you're able to look at prayer as a cognitive balancing of dissonances, where the reality that you experience. I had this experience yesterday. Yesterday I had this experience. It was amazing. I was given an opportunity. Sometimes you got to watch what you pray for. Okay, you got to watch what you pray for, because an opportunity presented itself to me, which is what I've been praying for. But it was such a massive opportunity that it was daunting. Like, I actually had to sit at my desk and I sort of like heaved a sigh of anxiety as I realized that the prayer that I'm watching slowly unfolding before me is so massive, it's terrifying. Okay? So I was like trying to realize, like, how on earth am I ever going to deal with this? And for a few minutes, I was like kind of resigning myself to this reality. And then, I'm not sure if it was one of my kids. I walked home and one of my kids said something to me. And I'm like, of course. Bitachon. Trust in God. The answer lies in my trust in God. And if I can just trust in God, I will be okay. Hashem will pave my way. He will carry me. He will lift me up. I just need to open my heart. Instead of blocking it off with fear, I got to open it up with faith and trust. And then in my prayer, I was able to attempt to balance this fearful opportunity. It's a good one, but it's fearful, with my inner serenity. And when I was able to do that, I was able to therapy my way to a state of balance, of equilibrium. And that's how you're supposed to look at prayer. Prayer is something that, not that you're like, oh my God, we're going to do prayer and then we're going to move on and start our day. No, you want to first do the therapy so that you can have a day that is balanced, that is meaningful, that is fun, that is tranquil, as opposed to a day that's chaotic and frenetic, right? So how do we get onto that topic? I don't know.
Good topic.
But what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to purgatory, I said we look at going up to purgatory, right? Going up to purgatory is because in the analogy of therapy, I was saying that. I was talking about the Kaddish. So why is a soul in therapy? Because you lived a life of cognitive dissonance, where the life that you should have lived and the life that you actually lived were out of sync. You were supposed to have been a good Jew, and instead you were a good gambler, or you were a devoted addict, right? And you're like, what? Why? And you're trying to now bring the two of those realities together. But now you look down from heaven and you see your son is saying Kaddish every day. What does Kaddish mean? Yiskadal v'yiskadal shmei Rabbi. Sanctified, glorified be his holy name. And you're like, up in heaven, you're like, maybe I lived a life that was empty, but hey, look at him. I created a child who can stand up before a quorum and declare openly, I believe in one God. And that, therefore, tell the therapist in heaven, in purgatory, tells the soul, your life might have been a total mess up, but at least look what you produced. And that's able to mitigate the pain of the soul up in heaven, right? So that's the reason we say Kaddish for 11 months. So already we're cooling the fires of Gehinnom, of purgatory. But let's see what the Talmud has to tell us about, specifically, the Talmud gets into this. You want to cool your fires of Gehinnom. That again, in my analogy, right? If you want to mitigate the pain of your therapy up in heaven, for the best way to do it, by the way, the best way is to live your best life now. That's the best way. Where did I see the story? Oh my God, I was in Panama now for Pesach, and I was reading a story about two guys coming to shul, and there was just one good seat left. One good seat left. So what did they do? They both, I deserve the seat. No, I deserve the seat. No, I'm more important than you, but I'm a bigger donor than you. Yada, yada, yada. A whole fight breaks out, and one of them gets a seat. That night, both of them have a dream. Now, whatever the story is true or not, doesn't make a difference. But both of them have a dream, and they see, truckloads and truckloads of trucks going places, and they're like, where are these trucks going? Oh, these are your merits, and these are your demerits, right? So, merits and demerits for who? For you. Why? For you. You're being judged. Why? Because this is your funeral. We're sort of weighing calculating your merits and demerits at your funeral. And then basically in the dream, the scale is exactly balanced. And then an angel cries out and said, is there not one other merit out there for this guy? Can somebody Find the merit of this guy. Maybe he was mevater. Mevater, M-E-V-A-T-E-R. Mevater means maybe he, how do you say that in English? Maybe he, this is one of the first words I learned in Hebrew. My mother would always ask me, Mi mevatel, who gives way? Who yields, that's the word. Who yields, thank you. Who yields for the other? Maybe he yielded to someone else, and that's when each one realized, oh my God, in shul yesterday, I could have given the other guy my seat, and that would have been great merit. So the next day when they come to shul and there's only one seat, each one says, no, you take it. No, you take it. Because you realize that, if you live your best life now, you're going to be avoiding or mitigating the pain, where instead of them asking you, why weren't you the best version of yourself? Why weren't you using the talents and the gifts that you were given from God for the purposes that they were given to you? Use them now. That's the best way to mitigate the fires of Gehenna. But the Gemara now gets into how we can actually cool the fires of Gehenna. Middle of page 208 in the Talmud, the Mishnah discusses, this is the book we're in case you don't have one for YouTube viewers. It's the Schottenstein edition of the Art Scroll in Yaakov, volume 1, page 208. The Mishnah discusses the law of someone who recited the Shma, but did not pronounce the letters of the words clearly. You can't say Shema at high speed. There's a speed limit on the highway. There's a word limit in the prayer. You can't pray like this. Imagine somebody, the previous Rabbi says, imagine somebody comes up to you and says, what would you do? How would you respond? Yeah.
Some people.
Okay, well, why are they doing that?
Jonathan has a good joke about that. The guy goes up to heaven and God comes up to God and God goes, he says, what are you saying to me? He says, that's how you said to me all along.
Yeah, you mumble to me, I'm going to mumble to you. Right. So, think about it. If you think of prayer as a recital, then maybe you'll just mumble your way through. But if you think of prayer as a conversation, you're articulated clearly. You'll speak like a mensch. You'll say, "Can you please pass me the water?" As opposed to, right? So you're supposed to say the words of Shema. You're supposed to enunciate them. By the way, I'll tell you something else. If you look in the siddur in the prayer book, you'll notice a piece of punctuation which probably nobody really sees. And that is, I'm going to show you on the screen. I'm going to point to it. There are these random lines in between the words right there. See, it's like a line. Why is there a line in between the words? What do you call that punctuation in English? It's my favorite. It's my second favorite punctuation mark. I don't even know what it's called. It's on top of the enter thing on the keyboard, on top of the enter. But you need to do a shift and that piece to get it. It's like a line. I think it's called like a break or something.
It's a break.
Is that what it's called? It's called a break. It's called a break, like a pause. What?
But
It's a pause in music.
But when I listen to you and others read the Torah, it seems like
No, because look,
what am I missing?
Maybe you're not understanding.
You got down.
Dude, I'm not gonna do it in slow motion. You know what I mean? But I go, right? I'm not gonna go in slow motion, but you could follow and you can see the words on the enunciation of the words. The purpose is the reason for these paragraphs.
When you run one word into another.
Oh, so that's the problem. The problem is when you run one word into another, and that's not allowed. See, the reason why they have this break in between the letters, the words, is when the last letter of a word and the first letter of the next word is the same letter. Like bechol levavcha, where the lamed or the L is the last letter and the first letter. Bechol levavcha. If you say it quickly, bechol levavcha, it's like bechol levavcha. But you're supposed to say bechol, pause, levavcha. That's how you're supposed to go, right? Because when you do it that way, you're enunciating the word. So now, we said the Gemara before discussed the Shema, the law of the person who did not pronounce the letters of the words clearly. After discussing a number of related points, the Gemara tells us the reward for those who are careful to pronounce the words of the Shema clearly and do not allow the final letter of one word to run into the next word. You're supposed to pause between two words when the second word begins with the same letter as the last of the previous word, so the letters don't run into each other. The Gemara now discusses this verse: when the Almighty scatters kings in it, the land of Israel, shall those in shadowy darkness be whitened. Let's see. Reb Chama, the son of Rabbi Chanina, said, whoever recites the Shema and carefully pronounces its letters and words, Gehenna is cooled for him. As it says, purgatory is cooled for him, as it says, when the Almighty scatters kings, in it shall those in shadowy darkness be whitened. Literally shall be like snow. For the purposes of expounding the verse, do not read the word as befares, which means when he scatters, but rather as befaresh, when he is clear. And do not read the word as betsalmoin, in shadowy darkness, but rather as betsalmoves, which is another way of reading that word, i.e. Gehinnom, purgatory. The verse is then expounded as follows. So basically in Hebrew, remember there are no vowels in the original. A, E, I, O, U are the English vowels that are built into the English language. But in Hebrew, the vowels are not actual letters. They're invisible dots and lines all over the place, which are actually fluid. So you could read the word befaresh, or you could read the word befares, right? You could read it as scatters, or you can read it as clarifies. You can read it as betsalmoin, which means shadowy darkness, or betsalmovis, in the shadow of Gehinnom. So the reading of the word now goes as follows, according to the way the Talmud is interpreting it. If you will accept the authority of the Almighty clearly, if you will clearly accept, eloquently accept the authority of God Almighty by properly separating the letters and the words of the Shema, then the Torah through which the kings of Israel rule will cool off like snow the shadow of death, purgatory for you. Wow. So what that means is that when we clearly enunciate the letters of the Shema, clearly accepting God's rule, it's then that the fires of Gehinnom, purgatory, are chilled out for us. Let's take a look at notes 2. That is, he will be protected from the destructive angels of Gehinnom. Beit Yosef explains that a person's body becomes heated through the exertions of reading the Shema with great care and precision. The heat offsets the heat of Gehinnom for him, measure for measure. Okay, let's see the bottom of the page. Cooling the fires in Insight A. Okay, let's see what happens. Cooling the fires. Tzlach raises the following difficulty with Gemara's teaching that the fires of Gehinnom are cooled off for someone who recites each word of the Shema deliberately and properly. We're at the bottom of page 209. If the person is completely righteous, then he is not put in Gehinnom altogether, that he should need his fires to be cooled for him. And if he is not completely righteous, so that he needs the atonement of Gehinnom to purify him, then cooling his fires for him deprives him of the atonement benefit. So once again, what is the point of being there? Now, I just want to say that I have a problem with a question. So the tzlach over here is asking a question. He's saying, what's the purpose of cooling off the fires of Gehinnom to the person who enunciates his Shema letters? Because if he does not need to go to Gehinnom, then what's the point? Useless. And if he does need to go to Gehinnom, then he needs to go to Gehinnom. Why do you want to cool his fires? My understanding is like this. I don't know anybody that doesn't need therapy, honestly. I don't know anybody that is living a life so perfect, that had a childhood so immaculate, that has a relationship so flawless, that they don't need to process any trapped emotion. I just don't know any human being like this. Do you? I don't know if such a person exists. I mean, I'm a rabbi. I talk to people for a living. You know, I hear their stories. And the stories are somewhere between hair-raising and unbearable most of the time, right? I don't know if I ever met a person that says, Rabbi, I need no healing. I'm perfectly normal. I mean, what does even normal mean? Like there's no such thing, right? Every person has triggers. So I don't understand this question. It looks like it's an academic question. Like if you need to go to that box, or if you don't need to go to that box, it's not about the box. It's about the experience of therapy, of being able to find a spiritual healing to your imperfections, right? Because no person is imperfect. So I disagree with the question fundamentally, but let's see what the tzlach answers.
Theoretical.
It is theoretical, and that's the problem. I don't like studying Torah theoretically, Shalom.
Some of it is.
I gotta tell you. I'll give you an example. So I'll give you an example. So when I give a sermon, okay, or a class, it's very important to me to make sure to ask myself if it's coming from my head or from my heart. Because I know if it's coming from my head, it's going to hit their heads. And it's going to go like in one ear and out the other, maybe, if I'm lucky. But if it's coming from my heart, then it's going to hit their heart. And that's what I want. Right? In order to reach that point, you got to go through the 3 steps of Chachma, Bina, Das. Chachma is the idea, conceiving an idea. Bina is understanding. And then Das happens through meditating on the understanding to the point that it becomes a feeling that you own. Right? So I don't like studying Torah academically where it's just purely abstract, but rather applying it. So when I learn about Gehinnom, I'd rather be able to interpret it as an experience which is essential and meaningful. Not like the Christians, by the way. For the Christians, hell is like a threat. If you don't do the right thing, you're going to burn in hell for eternity. You ever saw that bumper sticker? Repent or burn in hell forever. I mean, that sounds pretty intense, right? For Jews, it's like, listen, if you're lucky, you'll go to Gehinnom, you go to purgatory, and then you'll be ready to go to heaven. Like, of course, who leaves this world, this imperfect world, and in heaven they say, this guy is ready for heaven. Like, yeah, seriously, you got to get dressed. You got to take a shower before you go into heaven. You know, it's been a nasty place over here. Yeah, it's a rough neighborhood, you know? At least take a shower, freshen up, do your hair, something, you know, put on some makeup, right? So that's what purgatory is. So who doesn't need that? Anyways, let's see the answer that he says.
You have to learn Torah sometimes just for theoretical. There's 2 types of learning. You have to learn sometimes for practical, and sometimes you learn just to learn it.
Why?
There's like, I learned Taisus a couple weeks ago.
Taisus is some of the most advanced thinking of Talmud, but go ahead.
That he was asking a question, a non-practical question, on an opinion that we don't go according to halacha, and it was really complicated, and it was like a whole page. Yeah, and we learned it for like a week, you know, on that same thing. And yeah, it's a non-practical question on a non-practical case, which is not.
So it's a hypothetical on a
Also,
hypothetical.
the case itself, even if it was, is never going to happen. Like, I can tell you that if it happens.
And you spent the
it
whole
comes to
weekend.
me.
Okay, so the question I want to challenge you
Isn't
to.
the benefit of that just the analysis?
Okay, so that's what he's saying.
To learn Torah,
That's what he's saying.
now,
But I want to tell you, the way I understand Chassidus,
Not
Shalom,
nice.
Chassidus is the hidden parts of Torah. And what that means is that Chassidus opens our eyes to what lies beneath the surface. And therefore, even an impractical, abstract, hypothetical situation is something that comes to life in a very personal way when you learn Chassidus. I wonder if there is a teaching from our rabbis that explains that piece of Talmud. And one of my dreams, if I had enough lifetimes, is to be able to organize the Talmud according to Chassidus. Imagine if we had a Talmud where at the bottom of the page, you had every piece of Chassidus explaining it. So organized, you know what I'm saying? If I could open a publishing house that would be able to organize the entire Talmud with the hidden Torah, the Chassidus of Torah, on that piece, translated, elaborated, and clarified. Wouldn't that be amazing to be able to say, oh, here's a Tosfos that seems to have nothing to do with anything, right? For 2,000 years, no, for Tosfos is what, 700 years old? For 700 years, we've been learning this without any ability to make it practical. But now, this is how Chassidus teaches it to us, right?
AI is going to AI will do it.
AI will do that? Oh, AI might be able to draw if Chassidus has been translated, which is not necessarily done. Anyway, let's see what happens. So, beautiful, Sean. Slach therefore explains based on the teachings of the sages of Musar. Now, this is not the teachings of Chassidus. It's the sages of Musar, which is the rebuke approach to Judaism, which is not the non-Chassidic approach. Let's see. That even complete Chassidim said they can pass through Gehinnom on their way to Gan Eden for the sake of their less righteous relatives. Like they're doing us a favor. Whose atonement is nearly complete, but who are unable to free themselves from Gehinnom because the prisoner cannot free himself. So Musar explains that there are people that don't need to go to Gehinnom at all. But they only go there to sort of like see who their friends and they say, come with me. To sort of schlep them out. As the tzaddik passes through, however, he is able to free these relatives and take them along with him to Gan Eden. His short passage through the fires of Gehinnom to save his relatives, though, does cause him some degree of suffering. It is this suffering of the tzaddik that is eliminated because the fires are cooled for him. When he passes through, if he was careful to recite each word of the Shema carefully. Folks, I gotta tell you, I have a problem with this. Whatever. I have a hard time accepting this. It's look, it's beautiful, and who am I to disagree with these opinions? Okay, but I just want to suggest like this, that there's two ways to study Torah. You can study Torah academically or emotionally. And I think academically speaking, it doesn't make sense. The question makes sense. It doesn't make sense why a tzaddik would need to go to Gehinnom. But when you get emotional about it, then you realize that it's about, when you realize the way I explained it, that it's about your soul needing therapy, then I don't see why even a tzaddik would not need to stop off and Gehinnom for a little bit. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not a tzaddik. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But we're on this journey together. And if anybody, there's one person I know. No. The Talmud says that there were 4 people that died only because of the sin of Adam and Eve. You know, they were Benjamin, son of Jacob, Kilav, son of David, Yishai, father of David, and someone else. So basically, there were 4 people in history that died, not because of their own sins. But maybe, I don't know, maybe they don't need to go to Gehinnom. I don't know. I'm not sure. In any event, it's a beautiful piece of Talmud. Let's be careful of the words of prayer, to remember that we're talking to God Almighty. No other creations in this world have the ability to have a private audience with God Almighty whenever they want. So cherish the opportunity. Pray from the depths of your being. Say it like you mean it. And that will mitigate your need for therapy up in heaven. Thank you very much.